I'm really glad I always wear these at concerts. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 2019 drama Sound of Metal. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Sound of Metal stars Ahmed, Paul Raci, and Olivia Cooke, and was directed by Darius Marder. It tells the story of punk metal drummer Ruben Stone, played by Ahmed, who loses his hearing and must learn how to cope with the life-altering change. As a film reviewer, it's kind of a given that I love movies. I love watching them, I love writing about them, I love talking about them. Film is my biggest passion in life. My second biggest passion is music. If you've been following my reviews for a while, that probably doesn't surprise you, because I do talk about music quite a bit. I actually got my start writing album reviews, years before I got into reviewing film. I listen to music every day. I play guitar, I've got a CD and vinyl collection that almost rivals my Blu-ray collection, and aside from going to the movies, going to concerts was one of my favorite things to do in my free time, hence my absurdly large band t-shirt collection. I like a lot of different types of music, but my core genre is rock. So when I first heard about Sound of Metal, I was really excited. It seemed like it was going to be the perfect melding of my two passions, movies and music. It turns out that this movie really isn't about the music at all. There are some very brief concert scenes towards the beginning, which certainly had me pining for the days of actually being able to go to concerts, but the music and band elements are really only used as an in for the story, and a means of establishing our main character. To be honest, I was a little disappointed by that, because I was expecting and hoping for something a bit more music-centric, but the direction this movie mostly makes up for it. Plus, by not focusing on the metal, or perhaps more accurately, noise punk, it does make the story a bit more accessible to people unfamiliar with and unaccustomed to the genres. So if it's not about the music, what is it about? That's a little difficult to succinctly answer, because there are quite a few things going on with this movie, but if I had to condense everything into one overarching theme, I would say it's a movie about learning how to cope with change. It shows that change is sometimes well beyond our control. The actual change isn't always due to our own actions, but how we respond to that change and deal with it is. And so this is a very emotional and frequently introspective film. It deals with a sudden life-altering change for our main character, but what it really focuses on is his response to that change, and what he learns about himself as a result of the experience. This is a very immersive film on a number of levels. We go on this journey with Ruben, and this movie does an impeccable job of making us feel like we're right there in his shoes. We get a good sense of his passion for both drumming and his girlfriend Lou right off the bat, but the film wastes no time throwing us into the meat of the story. All the emotions that Ruben has throughout the film are channeled directly into us and are incredibly palpable. The anxiety and fear that comes from his sudden hearing loss, the disbelief and overwhelming nature of his diagnosis, his grief over realizing how much of his life is going to change, his frustration and helplessness as he finds himself in new situations, the hope and disappointments he faces along the way. Whether you're actually invested in Ruben as a character, you're just imagining yourself in his situation, or a little bit of both, you feel it all. The story and script certainly have a hand in conveying those emotions so effectively, but most of the credit really has to go to Ahmed for his performance as Ruben. He is so good here. He doesn't give an extravagant performance or have a ton of those typical Oscar-worthy monologues. Instead, he's much more subdued. He's able to convey a lot with just a look or a reaction. A lot of it comes through his eyes, so you know how he's feeling, even if he's saying the opposite or not talking at all. I think part of why this performance seems so good is because it doesn't feel like a performance at all. Like I said before, we go on this journey with him, and it all just feels so genuine. He doesn't feel like an actor. He just feels like a real guy trying to cope with a life-altering situation. The performances and story both help to make this an incredibly immersive film, but it's the technical elements that really put it over the top in that regard. This movie has got some excellent sound design and sound editing. It probably doesn't come as much of a surprise, but sound, or the lack thereof, is an integral component of this story about a musician going deaf. And much like Ahmed was frequently able to convey his emotions with just a look, this film was frequently able to convey its story with just sound design. Again, this movie puts us in Ruben's shoes, so we often hear what he's hearing, buzzing or ringing in his ears, muffled, almost underwater sounds, distortion, and sometimes complete silence. All of this is in very stark contrast to the actual sounds of the things around him, and the film sonically cuts back and forth between the two, resulting in a very immersive and affecting experience. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number one has gotta be the sound design. Sound is such an essential part of the story, and of Ruben's journey, and so it was incredibly important for the film to be able to capture that. And it did. The sound design and editing really showcase just how stark of a change Ruben's experienced. By cutting back and forth between the actual sounds and what Ruben hears, which varies at different points in the movie, it creates such an immersive experience, both in terms of the story, but also the emotion. As a musician, sound was everything to Ruben, and the way it's utilized here, or not utilized in certain cases, shows how isolating and scary it is to suddenly be without something you were so dependent on. The second pro is Riz Ahmed. His performance feels so genuine and heartbreakingly believable. He doesn't do anything over the top or overly theatrical here, but that subtlety he brings to the character is a big part of what makes his performance so good. You buy him as a drummer. You buy him as an addict. And most importantly, you buy him as an ordinary guy going through an extraordinarily challenging and scary situation. He feels real, and his ability to bring the audience on this journey makes the whole experience startlingly palpable. On the con side, as much as I would have liked to have seen the music and band side of things play a larger role in the story, my only significant issue with the film was how drawn out it felt. The first half of the movie does an excellent job of establishing Ruben as well as his situation. It's anxiety-inducing and really well-paced. The second half of the movie slows down pretty significantly. Like I said before, there's this introspective component to the film that focuses on coping and finding stillness in your life and embracing it. So the slower pace does have a role in the story. It just went a little too far with it. It gets borderline dull for a while, and kind of fizzles out in an almost incomplete way. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Sound of Metal or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Sound of Metal 4 out of 5 paws. This is an immersive and emotionally taxing film with an excellent lead performance and some of the best sound design I've heard in a few years. I would recommend Sound of Metal to fans of immersive, character-driven stories. This is all about Ruben and his journey dealing with hearing loss. And it's emotional. It's anxiety-inducing and sad and scary and overwhelming, and we feel what Ruben feels. If you're a fan of music, I think you'll have some extra appreciation for this movie. Not because it utilizes music all that much, but rather for its acknowledgement of what music can mean to a person, and the impact its loss can have. And of course, anybody who likes the technical side of filmmaking is sure to be impressed by the sound design here. If you liked Sound of Metal, I would recommend A Quiet Place. While the story's quite different, post-apocalyptic horror as opposed to drama, it's another film with impeccable sound design and editing. Just like with this movie, the sound, or lack thereof, in A Quiet Place is essential to the story and makes for a very immersive experience. If you're looking for another good, emotionally gripping story about a drummer, you might want to watch Whiplash. It's a tense, anxiety-inducing film, but it's a really good one. And if you want a movie that focuses a little more on the music and band side of things, you should check out Green Room. It's a horror thriller that focuses on a punk band and a performance gone awry, and is another really gripping, tense movie. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Sound of Metal? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite movie that incorporates its sound design right into the story? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.